Welcome, everybody, to today's Building My Legacy podcast. I have with me today Kyle Duford. He is the agency director for Brand Leader, and it is an agency that works with building brands in incredible ways. So I think a lot of people talk about building brands, but they don't have the breadth of experience and the reach that Kyle has had. So some of the people that Kyle has worked with, just so you get a sense of what he's done, he's created outstanding experiences for global brands. He's looked at brands such as Nike, Dr. Martens, Keen, Lululemon, so sorry, Power Bar, Ariat, Chrome Industries, Noon, and the list goes on. So he's a person who has played with the best, understands what is important to really build a brand, become known within that brand. He's also a former editor of a magazine, so he understands what it is that people look for in press and the stories that people want to hear. So Kyle, before we get started, just tell us, how did you get into this? What is it that brought you to this? And what's your passion as a agency director, creative person?
Gosh, well, thank you so much for that introduction. It's always embarrassing when I hear that read back to me. And that's, you're very kind. Thank you. To be clear, there's some of those stints I was at full time. Some of them were consulting opportunities, and some of them we worked with as an agency and not myself. But yeah, the list is, as they say, long but dignified. So how I got into it is, you mentioned the magazine. I was reading Lance Armstrong's original book, It's Not About the Bike. And the year it came out, I was flying to do my first triathlon in California off the coast of LA. And I was reading this book on the plane, and I was plowing through it. And I thought to myself, why am I not doing what I will love and what I want to do? And at the time, my passion was people and sports and fitness. And I thought, well, I'm going to go start my own triathlon magazine. And I was 25 years old. I had no idea what to do. I was working in a coffee shop full time. And I thought, that's what I'm going to do. And I pretty much came home and quit everything and started making a magazine. Now, I did have a background in design and writing, so that helped. And anyway, that went off the ground. We did really well. I sold it to a competitor. I moved on to work with some other great magazines like Outside and Men's Journal and Men's Health. And then when the writing was on the wall for magazines, I just kind of leaped over to online content, worked with some great businesses like Examiner.com for one. And then somehow I ended up in California. And I thought, well, what am I going to do? And I had this background in storytelling, as you mentioned. I had some design experience. And now I have this kind of unique take on analytics and online marketing, getting people to read the content we did at Examiner. And somebody needed an art director for their website. And it was Chad Hurley's sister company. It was called Halaska. It was a menswear company. Chad was one of the two founders of YouTube. And they needed an art director for the web. And I went, but wait, aren't you selling your stuff online? And everyone's like, yeah, no one really buys it online. And I thought, well, let me have a stab at that. And so I tried to sell the product online, and we went from like $900 a month to like $18,000 a month in a very short time. And I found that because I had this unique background, I was able to tell that story online to people who were looking for products. So long story short, I just fell in love with brands from the inside out, and having that kind of like that three-pronged attack of sales, content, and design enabled me to help shift brands into a new direction. And I was able to take those skills to lots of really well-known brands. You mentioned Keen. I was at their sister company, Chrome Industries. Then I was at Now, which is an outdoor brand, sustainable outerwear. And I ended up at Dr. Martens for a number of years as their global SVP of digital and e-commerce. And at the end of that run, I just went, I wanted a change of life. I wanted to spend more time with my family. I was traveling a lot. I was tired all the time, and I was starting to become really unhappy with the kind of the person I'd become, really with just fighting the fight of trying to, go up the corporate ladder. And that wasn't my passion. That wasn't who I was on the inside. So in efforts to live a more authentic life, I jettisoned all that, took a sabbatical, and resurfaced down here in Greenville, South Carolina with my family, where, as you said, I'm the agency director and also the executive creative director at the Brand Leader, where I'm able to do that for other brands. And you mentioned Power Bar, they're one. There's a whole bunch of other local and national brands we work with. In a rebranding sense, helping them find purpose, passion, and ultimately brand position so we can help them sell more products or services, as it were. So it's kind of a mixed background, but looking back at it, every time I tell this story, it's always just it kind of pleases me to know that, I surfaced where I am.
So what I'm hearing you say, Kyle, is part of what pushed you and motivated your changes, your movement in your career was a desire to give back, to create purpose, to create meaning within your life. Am I hearing that correctly?
Yeah, you are. I would say that's probably from my personal voice right now. In the midst of it, as I was younger, I didn't know what was important. I think a lot of us, as we grow up, as we become adults and even more mature adults, an incumbent upon us to understand what makes us tick. I didn't have the luxury, or maybe the wherewithal, or maybe even the self-awareness to look inside and realize what really I was about. And so, unfortunately, I chased a lot of other things. Now, in the process of doing that, I think I also helped a lot of people I've worked with. I always used to claim, and I can still claim, that anyone who ever worked for me in any capacity has gone on to bigger and better things, got promoted, took my job when I left, or had my job at another business. And some of my fondest memories is promoting people or having them leave to take a job that's bigger than mine. So that was always part of my story. Unfortunately for me, it took me a while, probably until I was in my early 40s, to really understand what that meant for me. And then when I realized that how important that was for my benefit, for my health, for my mental state, then I finally addressed it within myself. And then I started pursuing the things in which made me happy, if that makes sense.
So, Kyle, what was it that allowed you to begin to address that for yourself? Because for some people, it's a life experience. Maybe it's a tragedy. Maybe it's who knows what it is. But there's usually some event that happens that causes us to pause and rethink and then pivot. For you, was there such an event, or what was it that allowed you to get to that point of saying, I got to deal with me?
Wow. Yeah, there was a moment, and my stomach dropped as you started asking that question, because I remember the moment very, very particularly well. It's a visceral reaction to me when I think of it. It was a series of events. I was exhausted. I was in London almost. I was living in Portland, Oregon, and I was in London maybe every 3 weeks for about a week to 10 days, and that constant travel was just getting to me. I didn't know where I was anymore, and because of my personal insecurities of trying to understand how I fit in the world. I had a real bad imposter syndrome case, probably my whole life. And when I when I was so tired and so stressed, that part of me came out quite a bit. So what would happen is I would pretend to be something I'm not, just to get through the day or a meeting or whatever that might be. And then I'd come home and cry and just be so broken, and to the point where I didn't know what was real anymore. Like, do I know this? Do I not know this? Am I right for this? I was the only American and the youngest person on the leadership team of Dr. Martens. So it's a $550 million business. Who am I to be on this board? And so I may have self-sabotaged myself a little bit towards the end. I may have done some things that were reckless, but in the end, I lost my job. Part of it was they wanted me to move to London, and I wasn't willing to do that. But I also made some mistakes, which ended in our splitting. And I got divorced, and to the mother of my youngest children. And it was a heartbreaking moment for me, because I was forced to look at who I was and realize that the time of who I was, culminations just happened to me at the right moment. And it's at
Kyle,
those times where I think we can be.
you're going to have to pause for a
Did I
minute.
lose you?
Yeah, you're going to have to go back to, I had to look at myself. Right after
Okay,
you had the divorce, I had to look at myself. If you could start there.
sure. We're back on a stable connection.
I hope so.
I
If
just
it's
lost you.
cutting.
I just lost you again. Okay, well, let's try this again. It couldn't be more at a more opportune moment, right? To have the internet cut out. So I was forced to look at myself and to look at who I was. I'd gotten divorced, and after partying with Dr. Martens, it was all of my identity was wrapped up in that. into who I was in corporate world, what it meant, flying first class, all that garbage. And so while many people can live that life and be fantastic people, I that wasn't me. And so instead of it emboldening me more and just feeding that ego, at this one point, it just broke me. And so I just paused and said, who do I want to be? And so I'm lucky enough that my faith grounds me quite a bit. And while I wasn't quite following that path at the moment, I was able to return to my faith and understand who I wanted to be and realize that I was made a certain way. I was made in a certain image. I was made with all of my peculiarities because of who I am, and to embrace that, embrace my failures and my faults, but also the things I am gifted at, and just reassess who I am. And so, yeah, I'm happy now because I get to understand decisions we make and work with businesses without any preconceived notions, without wondering if they're going to take me to the next level or not. It's more about them. It's more about how we can help build a brand or a business. And I'm willing to give them any information that I might have if I'm the best one to do that. So yeah, it's been a really weird road, but I'm happy. A wonderful wife who I happened to be engaged to 22 years ago, and we reconnected and married, and we have a blended family, and she helps me quite a bit understand who I am, and then hopefully I can get to pour that back into the people, but now with a different purpose.
So when we started, we talked a little bit about the next chapter, which is legacy. And you talked a lot about people and having that be your passion. But let's start with legacy. What do you want to leave behind of yourself?
I'm wondering if I should pay you by the hour for this or not, but for me, I used to think it was, how much I could accomplish or attain. And for me now, I mean, I actually told people yesterday in the office, we had a rough day here talking about some things. And I just said, I believe I'm here to help build men and women of character and quality and integrity. And if I can do that, and if the people at the end of my story show up when I leave this earth and remember me for that, gosh, that would be such a win for me. And it would be a pleasure and a privilege to know I had any little inkling of development in people's lives, because I think I took a lot away from people during the first half of my life, more than the first half of my life, which I'm not proud of. And so hopefully if I can be remembered in this way, that would be great. I think a legacy, someone gave me a quote the other day and I wanted to remember it knowing I was meeting with you. But it was something to the effect of, your accomplishments are one thing, but a legacy is, who you really are. It was something, I'm bastardizing that somehow, but and as I thought about that, I thought, yeah, I don't even want loving husband and great father on my tombstone, because that should be part of me. That should be who I am. That is who I am. My wife knows that. My children know that. But what I would love it to read, or what people would say at a funeral would just be that somehow I affected them, good or bad, something that's hopefully good, but something that they can remember me by, that somehow I was a catalyst for their growth. Because I can tell you in my life, I had those people that were, I was lucky enough and blessed enough to have certain people in my life to help me along that way. So legacy, I think hopefully it's more just the way I live my life,
So legacy is how you live your life. It's building people. So how do you go about building people? A lot of people talk that, but they don't do it. So how have you intentionally gone about that now, since you have come to that realization?
Yeah, it's not something I might be able to articulate easily. I think it's built and predicated on lots of relationships and understanding who you are and what your weaknesses are as well. And then having really the guts and the courage to have a meaningful, deep, authentic relationship with people, whether that's your colleagues or staff or family and friends. I don't think it matters. I think but it starts with a willingness to understand who you are first, which was probably why I wasn't able to do that most of my life and career. If I can look at the mirror in the morning and know what my weaknesses are and understand what I've done wrong and what I need help with, and I'm willing to ask for help and advice, and for someone to walk with me in this world through those hard times or hard issues, then I might have the right to speak into other people's lives as well. And so we have a very open Katie's sitting right here listening. Hopefully she agrees with this, but we have a very open relationship in the office where there's still a structure, there's still a hierarchy. We have to have a business and have it work accordingly, but where we can be honest with one another. One of our core tenets is authenticity, but the other one is ownership and responsibility. So while you can be open and honest, you can't just be open and honest and just walk away. You have to be open and honest and then own your mistakes and own your wins. And I think that builds character. We have a phrase here where it's a character, competency, and chemistry. And if you meet those three criteria, we'll work with you. We'll hire you. If you have the right chemistry with us, if you have the right character, and if there's a right chemistry match. And so, yeah, I don't know how I build people. I can just tell you that the most meaningful things I've ever heard people say about me has been recommendations on LinkedIn because of how I helped build them. It wasn't about what I helped them achieve. It was how I helped them personally. So yeah, it's interesting. It's listening, which I don't always do well because I'm a talker. It's hearing, meeting people where they are and helping them through whatever and helping them get the right look. I'm not making a dire picture where everyone here is broken and needs help, but we all are in a position where if you can have meaningful, honest relationships, then you actually can look into yourself and be a better person. And that could be very silly. That could be a very small thing. I mean, I can see my brother-in-law from here and he works for us as well. And he and I challenge each other constantly on how to be a better man and a better father and a better husband and a husband to his sister. And also at work, and he can challenge me and how I speak to people and how I bring my vision to bear and those things like that. So it's having that communication, that willingness, that openness to have those honest conversations.
So I want to go back to what you said about building people through authenticity. Because we talk a lot about authenticity. I'm not sure we always understand what authenticity really is.
Sure.
So for you, what does that mean?
I'm a big Brene Brown fan. I think a lot of people.
Great, isn't she?
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah. I was actually reading Daring Greatly when I was on my little, quest to figure out who I am. And in those days after the divorce. And it's one of those things where I think just being authentic is just being real and honest with yourself and realizing that there's things about yourself that sometimes we either willingly ignore, which might not be untruths, but you just don't address. And so,
how do you define authenticity?
Well, that's a hard one. It's a complicated question. I'm a big fan of Brene Brown. I'm a big fan of how she looks at the world. And when I was reading Daring Greatly during my kind of midlife crisis, it was the first time I realized that other people struggle with the same thing that I did, being shameful, feeling shame rather. And when I understood that, shame isn't necessarily from God. It's that's something that's in us that we put on ourselves, and that shame is not healthy, and that we all feel guilty over one thing or another in our lives. It could be small, it could be big, could be a series of events. When I realized that I wasn't alone, I was able to look around going, well, everyone struggles on some level with this. I was able to go, wow, that's refreshing. It's freeing to know that you're not alone. And while my issues weren't deep, there was no addiction, there was no abuse of anything. I wasn't abusive myself. I was just severely unhappy because I didn't come to terms with who I was. Admitting that and understanding that it's okay to be me, and not everyone has to like me. I don't have to please other people. I don't have to feel like I'm an imposter if I know that I'm smart on that topic. Those are the things that I realized that I could be authentic. My wife, who went through a similar growth experience right around the same time as we were getting back together after all this time, she was talking to some people, and she said that admitting who she was felt like she was coming out, like a homosexual would come out. And we have some very dear friends that are gay and have experienced trauma around that. because of the way they fear people will see them. But once they admit who they are, who they really are, there's a freedom that comes with that. There's an empowering that comes with that, because you're able to say, this is who I am, and I'm happy with that person. And so that's what I feel authenticity is. And being authentic means looking in the mirror, looking inward and saying, I not only like you, I love you, and all faults and all. It's kind of like what we would want others to look at us and say. So that's really what, I mean, I don't know if I'm giving you a great definition, but for me, that's what it is meant. And, my CEO here, he's very kind and gracious to me. And he calls me on my own stuff. Like, hey, you don't have to do that. Like, I love you anyway. You don't have to say those things. And I'm like, gosh, did I do that? And he's like, yeah. And that's not who you are. I was joking with him one day and I said, well, everyone knows I'm the bad cop and you're the good cop. And, you're kind and I'm not. And as a joke, and he goes, no, I want to change that narrative. You are kind as well. That's who you are. That's your spirit. That's your soul. It's just when you feel like you're pinned in a corner, you get defensive. Doesn't mean you're unkind. It means when you don't feel right about yourself, you're coming off a different way. And like I said earlier, I'm lucky to have people in my life who help challenge me that way. And hopefully I can do it with others, and especially our staff. Gosh, I mean, I love these folks, and it's a fine line to keep between leadership and friendship. But if you can straddle that and still have teachable moments for both of you, I mean, it just makes, where we spend most of our days, it makes that just such a more appealing place to be. And it's more appealing to me to live in that new skin, So.
It does bring a lot more joy, doesn't it?
Oh, completely.
Back to how that plays into what you want to do with legacy building.
Yeah.
Because let me ask you, can you build a legacy without being authentic?
You can build a fake legacy. You can build a legacy that is on a house of cards, I think. You can be known for something, but I think a legacy by definition is, withstanding and it's longevity. Yeah, it lasts. Exactly. And so if you build something which is built on fakeness or not of the heart or not true, then it just falls apart. Eventually people poke holes in it. So, and that's why it's like people who build businesses based on lies or pyramid schemes or whatever it might be, they never last, because eventually somebody finds out. If you build things on truth and heart and integrity, they last. And, hopefully that's what we're all looking for.
So Kyle, our time is almost up.
Mm-hmm.
Last thoughts that you want to leave with the audience, things that you continue to ponder or that are part of what you bring to the plate for your clients and your employees.
We haven't even really talked about our clients. That's a great point. I guess I would say that, we even just before this, I had a meeting with prospective clients, and it became very clear that their budget wasn't in the realm of something that we would even entertain, because we have a certain standard and so forth, and not because we're, jerks or anything. It was just, we know we have a certain standard we uphold. And I was just honest. And I said, hey, just want to be very clear that we typically don't really touch this kind of project for less than X, which was a lot more than they had thought, let alone all those things you're asking for. And so what I realized in that moment was they were so appreciative that I even just was honest with them that, and you have to deliver it in the right way. You can't be cocky. You can't be arrogant. You can't be rude. Lessons that took me literally a lifetime to learn, and I continue to learn daily. But by being honest with them and saying, I heard what you were expecting, but I need to bring to you our truths and maybe just the truth of the project, and let you know that your expectations aren't in line with what you're asking for. But doing that honestly and kindly, it turns out that they then learn something. You're able to form a partnership based on trust, rather than sending them a proposal later on that's way out of their ballpark. They think that I didn't listen to them, or we didn't care, or we're just trying to, make more money. But having that conversation up front, being honest up front, enables us to build a partnership later. Whether they hire us or not, that's beyond the point. they know that we act with integrity. And we try to do that with billable hours. We try to be gracious with our time. We try to make sure that if people ask us for a question because there's confusion, we don't bill them for that, because that should be part of our relationship, not a part of the work we do. So that's how it really works with our clients. And so we just didn't talk about them, but I think the folks that work with or hire us, they're just as important as the people we work with internally. It may be more, because they end up becoming the outward expression of who we are internally. And that's kind of paramount to being in great business.
So Kyle, thank you. It's been wonderful to have this conversation with you. One of the things that, as I listen, that I take away from it is, here you are, you have a company that has really done some amazing things. You've worked with clients that many people would be envious of you for what you've been able to accomplish. And then you've been able to package that with a real sense of, what will I leave and how will this impact the people that will come after me? And I think more and more, that is a question we're going to be held accountable for asking.
Mm-hmm.
So I just really appreciate your thoughts on that.
Well, thank you. It's not always easy talking this way. I mean, you have to be vulnerable and you have to be authentic, especially when I know a colleague's in the room and people can see me through my window. It's one of those things. But again, that's just a muscle you have to exercise in this ever-going quest of reaching authenticity. So it's not a catchphrase. It's not just the trend. It's reality. It's who we are.
So thank you so much, Kyle. And for those of you who are listening, we will have information about Kyle and his company in the show notes, so you can get in contact with him. And if you need some help getting in contact, just let us know. We'll be glad to connect you. Thank you very, very much. And those of you who are listening, remember to visit our website, buildtomorrow.com, and our social media sites as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Lois. It was a pleasure.
Thank you for watching my video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the bell button above. Leave comments. We'd love to hear what you think. And visit our other social media links as well. Thanks much.